to the Spheres of Spirit with Nancy Myers, aka the Lady of the Light. Nancy will discuss the everyday magic and wisdom of spirit which surrounds each of us, waiting to be discovered. She will share some of her remarkable orb photos, proving that our angels, guides, loved ones in spirit, and even pets surround us and guide us in our physical world. During this episode, Nancy will discuss one of the many spheres or aspects of spirit available to us based on her orb photography. She will also share a special channeled message from her guide, Leonini, and do an oracle card reading to help guide you along your personal spiritual adventure. And now, here is your host, orb photographer, author, medium, and speaker, Nancy Myers.
Hi, welcome to the show. I am Nancy Myers. Thanks for spending some time with us today. I am super excited to introduce to you this good-looking guy joining me today. This is my husband, Rob. Hi, honey. Welcome to the show.
Hello, dear.
I really appreciate you doing this. Rob's kind of a shy guy when it comes to things like this, but our son Robbie in spirit gave me a message and said, Dad, you need to be on the show. And he wanted his dad to talk about his perspective of what he's witnessed through me, how it has affected him. And so we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about the differences of our spiritual path. So Rob and I have been together. How long, honey?
You're supposed to know this.
I do. I wanted you to answer.
Okay, so let's go with 50 years.
Yep. We have been together since we were 18 and 19 years old. So we know each other pretty good. If you've read my book, you know that I call my husband my knight in shining armor. His support, his love, it's been so valuable, especially since I started on this path. I could not have done that without the freedom and the acceptance and the love that he has given me. So I announced that publicly, and I thank you publicly for that, honey.
Oh, thank you for that.
So Rob and I kind of measure time as, and if you're just joining the show for the first time, I will tell you that our son Robbie crossed in 2010, 2 days before his 28th birthday. So for us, and I think I can speak for you here, Rob, time kind of stopped and restarted. So when Rob and I talk about something, we, instead of using BC and AD, we use BR and AR, before Robbie crossed and after Robbie crossed. So Rob, so the audience understands you and where you were before Robbie crossed. I want to ask you a couple questions. Is that okay?
Sure.
So what were your religious beliefs before you had any of this experience that we now witness? Were you a church-going person? Were you a believer in life after life? Tell me a little bit about where you were.
Well, probably should start at the beginning because my religious beliefs changed as I grew older. But I was raised an Episcopalian, went to church every Sunday, went to Sunday school, went to confirmation, did the whole 9 yards with the church. And honestly, I didn't really get anything out of it. I went through the motions. Of course, I was younger and all that. And then as we got older, we took our kids to church. And I think that started it maybe opening up a little bit more. But I'm more approach religion from a scientific standpoint back then. It's not as much as a faith-based type religion. Of course, everything changed.
Right.
When we lost our son, some real soul searching settles in, and then you're looking for answers. Like, okay,
Right. And we're going to get into that, what happened after. But what did you believe before Robbie crossed? Did you believe that there was life after death? Did you believe in the ascended masters, including Jesus and God? And where were you on that?
I didn't really think too much about life after death. What I thought about more in a spiritual sense for me was the universe and what's out there, and knowing that there's many. This is just, I'm no authority, but it's me speaking. There's many, many beings out there and many other people, and then they all have a God. And you know, we're, as human beings, we ask the age-old question: why are we here? What are
Mm-hmm.
we doing here? I mean, we're only here for a very short time. So um, I was kind of, I would say, an agnostic
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of years. I didn't wake up every day thinking about God like I
Mm-hmm.
do today. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's way different. So there's been a tremendous shift,
Mm-hmm.
and not so much that I'm a religious, quote, I'm a religious person. I am a more, along your lines, and probably from some of your influence, a much more spiritual person these days. And that's through trying to learn and reading hundreds of books and spending thousands of hours studying things about afterlife and the soul and survival and all those things. So
Right.
I guess
So
maybe, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. So before, and I find this with a lot of people that I talk to, and if I can bring up the first slide, Chris. So the slides that I'm showing are the pictures of my orbs, and then I match them up with quotes that I find pertinent to this broadcast. And these 3 pictures that I'm showing, these are recent orbs. These are orbs I just captured within the last 10 days. So this first slide, which you can always view on my website or here at OMTimes, it says, "There's no tragedy in life like the death of a child. Things never get back to the way they were." And that was a quote by Dwight Eisenhower. And I find that even for me, and it's what I said in the beginning, when we got the news that Robbie had crossed, time stood still, and I knew that our lives had been changed forever. Thank you, Chris, very much for that. So, and then when you go through tragedy like that, I think that's the catalyst then to look deeper. Would you say that that's how it affected you?
Oh yeah, I think we grow through tragedy. We grow through the hard times. It's not the easy, fun times which we grow through. Our souls grow through, tragedy, unfortunately. But
Mm-hmm.
that's the only time that really makes us search.
Yep.
Soul search is when we're really going through the hard times.
Mm-hmm. And it's painful, but what I know now and what I have learned and what I've experienced, that part of it, especially from our son, has been a gift. So I want to tell a little story here, because before Robbie crossed, now Rob and I, we've kind of always been a little different on our paths, on our either religious path or spiritual path. But I was always fascinated with spirit communication. And in the early days when James Van Praagh and John Edward would have their show, I was glued to the television. And what were you and Robbie doing behind my back when I was watching my
Well,
show?
we might have been giving you a hard time. I think what we did, we would walk behind you. We go, I think it starts with an M. I got an M here. And Mary, Molly, Margaret. It's an M. It must be an M. Yeah, that's what we
every
did. We gave you
every single time I tried to watch my show, they
we
teased
gave
me.
you, yeah,
But that was the
of course.
difference. But Rob, he's going, I don't know if you didn't believe that you couldn't talk to the people who have crossed, or that these people were not authentic. Which was it?
Um, I wasn't too convinced they were authentic.
Ah, okay. Okay. But did you believe that spirit communication was possible back then before Robbie crossed?
I doubt it.
Well, you had no experience, right?
I don't think I never before this. I never really had given it much contemplation.
Mm-hmm. Because we weren't forced to, right?
No,
It was like we get so wrapped up in our current life, in the day-to-day of living. It's like there's almost never any room to go beyond, or we're not forced to, right?
back then,
It's a little uncomfortable.
yeah.
So I'm going to ask you, I'm going to take you back to that morning because, and I talk about this more in depth in my book, but I heard the phone ringing and I did not want to get out of bed at 6:00 in the morning because something in my soul knew when I answered that phone, my life was never going to be the same. Well, because of the incessant ringing, I finally got up, answered the phone. I saw it was my sister-in-law, and that's where Robbie was. He was staying with his aunt and uncle in North Carolina. And I just shook all over. And then as soon as I got on the phone, that's when she told me. But in that immediate moment, and then shortly after, Rob, what were the kinds of thoughts swirling through your head?
Wow. Well, the first thought was the crushing pain. I mean, I heard you screaming in the other room,
Mm.
and I went in there, and you said Robbie's gone, and I just fell to my knees. The pain was, it was just like you couldn't believe it.
You couldn't breathe.
Couldn't breathe, couldn't accept it. Took a long time to just accept that.
Mm-hmm.
That was, or I mean, anybody that loses a child certainly knows that that's what's going to happen in the beginning, and then that's day one, and then you have to start to heal, whether it starts day 2 or day 3 or day 4. For me, I can honestly say my healing started pretty quickly in the sense that knowing Robbie, he was my son, but he was also like my best friend, my brother. I thought to myself, I go, well, what would he want? What would he want his dad to do? And I know what he wanted. He would, Dad, have a good time, live your life,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy your life. So from that day, I'm not trying to live for two people, but I am trying to find happiness and live my life like he would want me to.
Right.
That
Right.
was, and it took lots of time. Took a whole bunch of time to get, probably 2 years really, to get some feeling of normalcy where you just didn't think about it all day long.
Right. So your mind didn't go to, where is he? Could I ever hear from him again?
Oh yeah, sure it did, but not immediately.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't immediately go there, because honestly, I probably thought at the time, I don't think I'm not going to hear from him again. Why
Right.
would I hear from him again?
Yeah. See, and then that's our paths in my belief. I knew that I would hear from Robbie. I knew he was with me. And I did his eulogy, and I sat down to write it. And I said, okay, Robbie, tell me what you want me to say. And he interjected it with a lot of humor. And I got up and delivered that. But I knew that he was right there. Hollis Duran, who I've had on this program, and I'm going to talk about her more in a minute. She wrote that book, I'm Not Dead, I'm Different. And that's kind of how I felt about Robbie. I knew that he was here in some form, on some way, on some level. But I was such a beginner that I didn't understand that. So let me talk about, well, do you remember the moment when everybody left. And now Robbie was a drummer and he was 27. And, right after the funeral and before, you have all these people and there's a lot of commotion. And then all of a sudden the last guest left and Rob and I are left standing in the den by ourselves. And you hugged me. And what did you say to me? Do you remember?
Are we referring to the Janis Joplin,
Mm-hmm.
Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah.
Yeah,
What
I
did you?
said because I think a lot of our son was a fantastic drummer, and having passed at the age of 27, I said, well, you know what? Now they have a drummer, Janis, Jimmy, and Jim Morrison. Now they have a drummer.
Mm-hmm. They all died when they were 27 also.
They all passed away at 27. That's true.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I just wanted you to hear that because the only people in the room at that time was
Just
Rob and
us.
I. Mm-hmm.
Just
So
us.
my husband went out of town to visit some friends and family. And now Rob was never keen on me getting a reading. He thought I was wasting my money and I shouldn't be doing that. But he's out of town. So first thing I do is I'm going to get a reading.
Yeah. As soon as I leave, you do it.
What's my motto? Easier to ask for forgiveness than permission, right? So this was one of my first readings with Hollister Rand. And she gave me the reading. And I'm about 45 miles from Los Angeles is where I went to see her. She gave me the reading and all the way home, I'm shaking. And as soon as I got home, I had to call Rob because his son had a message for him. So I called you. And do you remember what I said?
Yeah, you said that. What's Robbie doing? He's looking up dead musicians. He's looking at Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix, and I thought, "There's how did that anybody know that?" It was kind of like
an
kind of
aha
like
moment.
a hook.
Yeah,
it was an
that's
aha moment. Yeah, it went from starts with an M to going okay.
Maybe this is real.
There's something going on here.
Robbie's exact message was, tell my dad I'm looking up famous dead musicians, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin. And I looked at Hollister when she told me that and I went, what? And she goes, those were his exact words. Yeah. And I went, OMG. But in that one message, that one moment, I think that's what changed it for you. Like you said, that was the aha moment. It was so carefully crafted and delivered by him. I mean, it was undeniable. He picked a moment when it was just you and I. So
he knew it would have to be very carefully crafted for me to buy it.
And it did impact you, right? I mean, I could hear the astonishment on the other end of the phone when I told you.
Yeah, I was stunned. I really, just the idea of that was mind blowing to me. How could she know this? How could she know that private conversation?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know people can do things to find out stuff about people. I go on the internet or whatever, but a private conversation, that's something all in itself different.
Right.
So that was the hook.
Right, exactly. And because your son wanted you to say, okay, Dad, you need to look into this. You need to expand and explore and learn. And that was how he got you started. So I'm getting some comments here. I appreciate everybody. And I just have to tell you, Rob, one of the reasons that Robbie asked you to be on my show, because he knows how you feel about this, kind of coming out of the spiritual closet, if you will, is they said, thank you for sharing the male perspective, and dealing with the grief and the loss. I tell people, I have all my girlfriends and workshops and seminars, and it's mostly women, that we talk to. But for guys, you can't talk. I don't feel you can talk as freely. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, most of my friends, even some of my dear friends, have no really idea of my spirituality and my faith. Because I don't share it. It's a very private thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's move then to what Robbie did in the next reading for me, because this is what really kicked me off. Now, up until this point, I had always believed, but I didn't think that doing anything spiritually was my job or an ability that I had. So I talked Rob in after he got that message from his son. I said, would you come for a reading with Hollister Rand? She'll do a couples reading. And I could see the fear in his face when I asked him to do this. But because he loves me and supports me, and because his son gave him such a wonderful hook, you agreed.
Yeah, I wanted to meet her.
Mm-hmm. And at that, I mean, she brought him in. She told us he was standing right between us, and she gave us a lot of wonderful information. But then she said, do you know what orbs are? And I said, no. And she said, well, that's going to be your job. You're going to work with your son, and you will heal souls on this side, and he will heal souls on that side. And I was excited, honored, and scared, I think, at the same time. But that was the beginning. Do you remember that conversation?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember it very well. I remember
And so,
when you captured your first orb.
Yep. And so I started on this path, and I'm telling this part because from the very beginning, Rob understood and allowed me the space and the opportunity and the protection to do this work. You stood by me. I started doing this work, and then, of course, it just kept going deeper and deeper and deeper. But what did you think about it, Rob? Because when I was doing in the beginning, people would say, oh, poor mom, I know she just wants to do anything she can to think she's still in touch with her son. But how did it affect you? How did it affect your relationship with your family and friends? I just want people to realize what you went through.
It's all across the board. I mean, I have some friends that think you're crazy.
A witch.
Yeah. You're a pretty witch, but they think you're nuts. And then, how many people can you share this with that would have any sense of understanding about it? It's my family obviously has been very supportive and all those things, and with your books and your podcasts and your education, which has been remarkable over the last 10, 12 years, all the seminars and the learning and the studying and the books and the travel, and it's been an incredible journey. I've been kind of sat back, and my thought was, this is her path. It's not my path, but I'm not going to interrupt your path. I will support your path and how you want to go, as I know you will mine. So we went down different paths.
We sure did.
I went down a different spiritual path than you did.
Yeah. And we're going to get into that in just a minute too, because I want to talk about how your spiritual journey developed and presented itself. But again, with Robbie's help. So as you watched me take these pictures of orbs, and that's where really it all started for me, was with the orbs. Was there an orb that made, I mean, you saw my pictures, and Rob, bless his heart, I was so excited every time I got an orb. I would take pictures every day. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. Oh, look at this.
Our neighbors must think, I don't know if you all watched the show Bewitched, but there was the neighbor, Agnes, I think was her name. And she was always catching Samantha doing something. And so my neighbors, they see these flashes going on every night, flash, flash, flash. And you can see they're looking out the window going, oh, she's doing it again. I don't know if they figured out what the hell she's doing, but very consistent every day.
Yeah. But when I showed you the orbs and I'd go, Rob, what would you see? Because after a while I would start getting faces and I could see the faces. And I'd show the orb to Rob. And what would you always tell me?
What I saw?
Yeah.
A dog.
Yeah. Because I see a dog. Every orb picture.
Every orb. I still see a dog.
I still see a dog.
I see dogs.
But so you watched this, and I don't know how you felt about watching this unfold. Did you believe that the orbs were spiritual? What were you thinking as I was getting geared up for this, as I was progressing down this path with the orbs?
I was thinking, okay, there's something here. It's obviously something, but I'm thinking, well, what is it? I don't know what it is. I can't. And I know you've explained it over the years more and more about what orbs are, but it's quite a phenomenon. And I really want to know more about what are they? They're there. They're colors. They got pictures in them. And for some reason, they always show up for you on demand.
Mm.
You can
but
ask them. They come.
They show up for you too. When you audience, when you see pictures of me, somebody has to take those pictures, and it's my husband. So he's
taken a few.
Yeah, he's taken a few. So he's a pretty good orb photographer in his own right. But was there one picture that meant more to you than all the ones that I've shown you?
Oh, absolutely.
And you know what? We're going to talk about that because I see it's time for a little break. But I'm going to talk about that one picture that kind of changed Rob's mind. So we'll be right back.
OMTimes TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities. The story told in Entering the Light Fantastic, Discovering Life After Life Through Orbs, is about Nancy Meyer's spiritual and emotional rising from the devastating ashes of loss caused by the sudden and unexpected passing of her son Robbie. Just like the legend of the reborn phoenix, Nancy's life purpose and focus was transformed. With the help from her son in spirit, Nancy found herself providing proof through orbs that our souls do not die with our bodies. In her second book, Encircled by the Light Fantastic, A Deeper Journey into the Light with Orbs, Nancy continues chronicling her path of gaining spiritual knowledge and expanding acceptance of what is possible, while traveling to many sacred and ancient sites around the world. She shares these experiences with you along with her photographs of remarkable spirit encounters.
When I first saw a turtle, my heart was full. Now anything but lonely.
We had this deep connection, this heart connection.
He just wants to be close to you and part of your life.
Every day with Turtle is a perfect day.
When I'm holding her, it makes me feel calmer.
I think everything he does shows how much he loves us.
When we adopt a shelter pet,
We discover
they're a little bit of a lot of things.
But they're all pure love.
And we're back. So we were talking about, took a lot of pictures of you, of course, in the beginning with Orbs. But is there one, and I know the answer to this, but which one? Talk about the one that meant the most to you.
The pink orb that was on my shoulder.
Mm-hmm. And why?
Well,
Set
again,
that up for us.
back to my son being a drummer. I also decided to take up drumming about 14, 15 years ago, and he was so good. He would make me tapes to practice, and he would label the tape, "Dad sucks at drumming."
He did.
So, but one night I was I was playing. I was up there for about 2 hours, and I could just, his picture is behind me, and it's him in front of the mural of John Lennon, and it sits over the same shoulder that orb appeared at.
Mm-hmm. And
so I was playing, and because I'm always thinking about, like, how was that feel? How was this? How was that? And it went on, and I just, that night I really felt him with me. It's like the music. The music it's like brings us together. Certain things where we get close, and music is one of them. And it's very emotional for me. And I came downstairs, and I was outside. You were at a seminar, I think. And I've never asked you this before. I said, "Would you take my picture?" I think, Robbie, I think he's with me. And I think that's the only time I've ever asked you to take my picture.
Can we bring the next slide up, Chris?
That's when that appeared on my shoulder. And
whoops.
I got another picture up there.
Back one. Yeah, go back one, Chris. There it is. Thank you.
So that's the picture. And, what can I say? He was with me. He proved it. He said, "Dad, I'm on your shoulder. I was watching over you." I think he watches all my little sessions that I do, but
yeah.
And it was 2013. That was about 3 years later.
Right. Yeah. And it's amazing because for my husband to say, "I feel Rob, he's here, take my picture." And then Robbie appears. It's hard to see, but that was a pink orb, which means love to me. And right over the shoulder of where his picture was watching, he's going, "Dad, I'm watching over your shoulder. I'm critiquing your drumming. I'm with you. I love that you're doing it." But thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. But that's an orb picture that I think Rob started to understand. Would you say that? The meaning of the orbs?
That was definitely, for me, I go, okay, this is real.
Yeah.
Something's going on here. And
exactly.
And that was early on, and now I feel him on a number of different things that he loves to do with me, and riding motorcycles is one. He's always on my trips with me.
Yeah. And sends you signs. Robbie will send him songs and numbers. 333 we know is Robbie's number.
It's amazing.
So this was my path, when Rob was following it. And along the way, we were reading books, and the books always seemed to kind of find us. But Rob, you always had a bent towards, I want to know more scientifically. Tell me more about the science of this, which is really interesting because now there's so much physics that's, proving what the spiritualists and the seers and the mediums have always said. But one of the books was, what was the name of that book? The Dancing Wulu.
Oh, the Dancing Wulu Masters.
Yeah.
That was a book on quantum physics.
Right. So he started, this is kind of where our paths started to diverge a little. We're still both very much on spiritual paths, but Rob wanted to go a little more to the physics and the science of how all this worked. It's kind of like when I do my orb photography, there are many orb photographers, but we all have our own little niche, right? So I got a reading, and you all have met Rebecca Rosen. She was on my show. And towards the end of my reading, she said, "Your guide is standing here and holding a book." And she said, "It's A Course in Miracles. Do you know what that is?" I said, "No." And she said, "Well, it's a lifelong study, and they're telling me that you should look into this." Okay, I'm a very obedient, spiritual follower. So I told my husband about the reading, and I told him the book, and I bought the book, and then I went to a couple seminars, and I went, "Oh, this isn't for me." It's so over my head. And what made you then pick that book up? Do you remember?
Well, you gave it to me. I started reading it, and when I even just read the introduction, I go, this makes perfect sense to me. This just resonated with me.
Mhm.
But it's an amazing book.
What is A Course in Miracles? What is that book?
It's really like it's a self-study spiritual thought system.
Mhm.
I mean, that's really what it is. It talks a lot about the two minds that you have, your ego mind, and then your mind of spirit, the Holy Spirit, your right mind, the mind of love. There's just so, and you're always in conflict with your ego and your Holy Spirit. You're always in conflict. And I mean, I don't want to get into it's so deep. You can talk about it for hours and hours, but it resonated with me because in the way that it talked about God, just made so much sense.
It filled in some things that you thought maybe were missing in the early days of your religion life.
Well, yeah, absolutely. It filled in a lot of things. I mean, it's Jesus talking.
I was going to say, do you want to tell us how
1,333 pages?
Yeah. So this book, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a channeled book. The lady that channeled it was a reluctant channeler. It came to her unsolicited. Over how many years? 7 years?
It was Helen Schuckman, and she was a psychiatrist at Columbia University at the hospital, and she worked there with another guy by the name of Bill Thedman. And the story is they couldn't get along. They were just at each other all the time. And finally, they said, well, there must be a better way. And that's when she started to scribe the book. She got the voice, and then she would write it down. It took 7 years of her to handwrite this down. And I finally came in 1975, which was actually the year we got married, was the year that book was first published.
Yeah.
And it comes in, 3 parts. There's the text, and then there's the workbook, and then there's the manual for the teachers. And the thing that is so fascinating is the workbook is 365 lessons, and it's one lesson for every day of the year. And so you read a lesson, and there's certain things they want you to do in the lessons and think about. And so I've done that 10 times now.
I know.
10
You're
years.
amazing.
I have done that because every time I open up a lesson again, I go, man, I just found something else.
You see it differently, or another layer's been peeled
I think
back.
it's almost in a language that you almost have to learn you have to read it so much to really understand it. It's written.
It's almost Shakespearean.
Yeah, it's written differently.
Yeah. And then because this was channeled to Helen directly from Jesus, the higher vibration, even when you read it, you feel it, right?
Yeah. And it's really what I come to learn about. A lot of people wrote books about A Course in Miracles. A lot of people teach it in seminars, and you can do group seminars. And it's truly a self-study. It's what does that text mean to you? It could mean something entirely different to you. You can't put it in a box. No. You can't teach it and say, this is what this means, because I tried that. And I go, no, that's not what it means to me.
Yeah.
It's a very personal relationship with the book.
I learned that one of the guy, the gentleman that was responsible for helping put it together, Kenneth, what's his last name? Wapner? Wapner. He is in not too far from us, about an hour and a half, and he was going to do a seminar on A Course in Miracles. One very brief part of it. And so I didn't know if Rob would go, but I asked him, because Rob's not good on group things. He doesn't play well with others. But anyway, I asked you, and you said yes, you would go, and we went there, and we actually met Kenneth. And what did you think of that? Yeah, what did you think?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, and that was in the beginning stages, so it was even listening to him, and he was the premier authority on the text. It was still mind-boggling at the time, and I can't get this.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a long time, I think, to understand it, although the book is really only about truth and forgiveness. And
yeah,
love.
It's basically the same message over and over and over and over again, right?
Yeah. Different sections, it's true.
Yeah. So when Rob started reading A Course in Miracles, he left me in the dust. I couldn't, but it resonated with him. He found it believable and reassuring, and I didn't understand it a lot, obviously. And what I believed and some of what Rob was reading about and learning didn't match up. We were not always on the exact same page. We still aren't. But it's in the reading when Robbie said just last month, you need to have Dad on the show, Mom. He said, because your paths are different, but you pace each other. And that's what we do. We give each other the latitude to follow the spiritual path, to follow what our soul needs, what resonates with our soul, right? Wouldn't you agree with that?
I agree.
And
definitely different.
Mm-hmm. And we don't try to convince each other of what we believe. We have some major differences, but we just honor each other's paths. So if we could bring up that next slide, please, Chris. It says, your journey is not the same as mine, and my journey is not yours. But if we meet on a certain path, may we encourage each other. And that's an unknown author of that. Mm-hmm. And these are two, I just love this because these are two orbs side by side, different sizes, different colors, but they're still spiritual, right?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. So when a parents go through the tragedy, the loss of a child, I've seen it over and over again. It can do basically one of two things. It either rips the couple apart because they get into the blame game or the guilt game, or they just can't handle it, or it pulls them together. And now Rob and I have always been close, always. But I think the AR, after Robbie's crossing, and because we're on this path, it has brought us together in a way I could never have imagined. Would you agree with that, honey?
Yeah, I would.
And you better.
Of course I agree with that. No, it's true. It's true. And it's because we're both on a spiritual path now.
Mm-hmm.
But that we were on a path of raising children and doing all kinds of other things, which doesn't really give you a lot of time to reflect too much about other things. But yeah, no, definitely. Because you're right. We have differences. We can talk about them. I respect yours. You respect mine. But yeah, we do. But I think at the end of the day, we both have the same belief systems as far as God. Afterlife, that may be a little different. What you think is afterlife and what I think is afterlife. But
yeah, and that's a big difference, by the way. Yeah. But it's okay. So that book was not the end all be all. There was another book that I kind of brought to you in an indirect way. And that book was called the Urantia book. And that is I was going to grab that book. That's a very thick book. And someone told me, oh, you need to get this book. Well, I got it and I started reading it and I went, okay, I have this book, but this isn't for me. And so I showed it to you and you started reading it.
Yeah. Amazing book. I read
And that's
it every day.
Yeah.
I get a message every day from the Urantia Foundation, which leads me into a text. And the book is 2 million words.
Wow.
And
now that book has a little different history. With the Course in Miracles, we know that it came out in 1975. We know who channeled it. But the Urantia book is shrouded in a little more mystery. Tell us about the beginning of that book.
Well, again, nobody knows for sure. There's actually books written on it. And I read one called the Urantia book and Edgar Cayce. And there was a lot of documentation and timing and proof that Edgar has spent time with Dr. Sadler, who was one of the main authors of the council. And this person believes that Cayce was the sleeping subject, or at least one of the sleeping subjects that channeled. And what this council of 20 did was they were allowed to ask any questions at all about the origins of life, God, the universe, the cosmos. And
it's all in there. Yeah.
It starts with it's all there. It's all
there. And isn't there like 700 pages just about Jesus?
Yeah, there's the second half of the book is about the life of Jesus, and it's about 700-800 pages, and it takes you through his whole entire life, where he went, what he said. Mm-hmm. It's all there.
So whoever put this book together, this came out before Course in Miracles, right?
Yeah, this came out way before.
Yeah. What was the year?
Well, I think it didn't
30s,
get
40s?
published. I don't think it got published till 1955, but the actual process started way before that.
Yeah,
but it got published, before. And it's now published in, I think it's in 30 some different languages now.
Wow. Well, it was shrouded in mystery when it came out. It was never attributed to any author. There were stories around that people would get up in the morning and they're working on the book and there would be pages sitting on the coffee table for them. Where it came from, they don't know. But the information in the book is fascinating. And it does, again, have a very scientific bias to it, right?
Parts of it. Yeah. There's a lot of science in it. Mm-hmm. You know, you're talking about the creation of the universe. So yeah, there's quite a bit in it, but for those of you out there that may want to take the time to pick up either one of those books, you know, the Urantia book it does explain a lot, but it's pretty heady stuff when you start talking about the universe
over my head
and the Trinity and just everything. It's but when you read it, and I've read a lot of, I've read it more than once. You know that was not written by a human being.
No,
there is no way. That anybody would, first of all, want to write 2 million words, and then to the detail from all the celestial beings, the angels, and the beginning of the earth, and if somebody pulled that off, that would be pretty amazing.
So we're coming up to the end here. So I want to ask you this question. How has this journey changed you? How has the journey since after Robbie crossed changed you?
Well, number one, belief in afterlife. I have no doubt about that. That we're a body. You know, we all have a spark of the divine within us. And the most natural thing in the world is to talk to God. It's not hard. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to go to a church. You don't have to read doctrine or tenets or anything. You just go inside and speak to him, because he left a piece of him behind in every one of us.
That's true.
So that's pretty profound when you're certain of his existence, and you're not certain, but have it's a question I always like to ask people. Go, well, you're gonna go to heaven, and I'm thinking of, okay, well, tell me about heaven. Where is it? What do you do?
Yeah.
Sit in front of a throne for eternity? That was not my thing. That didn't sound like a good option. But this book will tell you where you go.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some religions that are similar.
In alignment with that.
The Seventh-day Adventists are in alignment with it. The Mormon Church is somewhat in alignment with it, and the Christian Church. It's not a religious text by any means. Although there's a lot of references to the Bible for sure, because there's a lot about Jesus in there. And when Jesus talks, he references the Bible and things that he said and things that he didn't say.
Well, that's a pretty big change for you to do that. I'm going to bring up the last slide here because if I can, Chris, because this has happened, and wait till you hear Leonini's message. But I love this orb because it kind of looks like an eye. And this message says, sometimes in tragedy, we find our life's purpose. The eye sheds a tear to find its focus. And that's by American author Robert Brault, if I'm saying that right. But yes, sometimes, like Rob said earlier, it's painful, when we have to go through that. And thank you, Chris, for that. And Rob found his focus, his purpose. I found mine. But it was the catalyst again of that tragedy. So I'm going to keep you here while I do Leonini's message because, let me read Leonini's message here. So what I do, audience, is I sit usually a day or two before my podcast, and I ask my higher self, who is Leonini, my guide, to give me a message. And I've been channeling her now for, 2.5, 3 years. And I always ask with the intent that this is to be shared on the podcast. So this is the message that she gave me. I think you're going to get a kick out of this, Rob. She said, "What does it mean to be on course? A course is a heading, a direction. And when you are on it, you have an opportunity to reach a desired goal. What is your goal? Is it a path of learning, a way of growing? From time to time, it is important to check your heading to see if you have strayed off course. Sometimes you are blown off course by storms such as tragedies, illness, even your own ego. But you won't know unless you check in with your true self, your higher self. Should you discover that you are not heading in the direction you want to be, or should be, you will find that it is not difficult to do a course correction. You always decide the course direction and you decide the speed. That is the way it is meant to be. It is your free will. Free will, one of the greatest gifts of living. Check your map and check your moral compass periodically so that you may make corrections more easily. Point A to point B in life is not a straight line, nor is the course always in calm waters. After all, what would you learn if it was only smooth sailing?" So that was her message. I thought that was spot on with the Course in Miracles and then what we're talking about. So I'm going to draw a card really quick while Rob's still here. And since we talked about a course, the card deck that I have is called The Sacred Journey. And so let me pick one card, and I'll do this with the intent that this is a message from the highest good for the highest good for all who listen. So let's see what we have here. And this is the deck and the card. Okay, it says solitude. In silence, peace prevails. And this is so important when you're on a spiritual path, and I think my husband will agree with me. It's important to sit quietly, to go within. It's just like you said, we have that spark of the divine within us, but we need to be able to access that or take the time to access that. So one of the things Leonini always hits me over the head with is meditation, or at least taking some time to be quiet. So at this time, I want to thank my husband. It was so very brave of you and so very generous of you to come on the show.
Well, thank you.
I really appreciate it, honey. Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.